Hello, this is a special Michigan Week bonus episode of the Morning Scoop. We know a lot of you guys are traveling and need something to listen to in the car or on an airplane or however you're traveling, and there is also plenty of stuff to talk about. So it works out for everyone. We're going to give you an extra episode today to help fill a little bit more of the time between now and kickoff of at noon on Saturday. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's Tony Gerdeman. He and I also host the Buckeye Weekly podcast together. We're doing listener question episodes this week, and we got in an absolute boatload of listener questions. So we're going to do some of them here, and then you'll be able to hear the rest on the Buckeye Weekly feed. So go ahead and subscribe to that if you don't already. Tony, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tom. It's always an honor, as you know.
No one knows that better than me. Let's start with one from our friend Jordan Kapler. Obviously know Ryan Day better than I do, but it appears he holds grudges with coaches/teams. Maryland. Cough. I'm curious to hear your opinion on how much Day is thinking about not playing Michigan last year and the frustration that caused, or if he's thinking about it at all.
When I first saw that question, I thought, yeah, there's probably something there. But then listening to Ryan Day and the team talk about it on Tuesday, how that's not an impact, how every game each year is enough in its own right that you don't have to worry about last year's game. But I'm guessing if you were to lose last year's game, you're thinking about that. Not that Ohio State none of these players understand that, but I'm sure Michigan is thinking about the last time they played and using that as fuel. And I'm sure Ryan Day and everybody they were all unhappy. We were there live when Justin Hilliard found out, and you saw the disbelief and the hurt. And so it was something they work on all year. They build towards every single day, and it was taken away. And so unless they have come to terms with it wasn't Michigan's doing, it was COVID, it was all of that. Like if they put the blame on just 2020, all of it, I don't necessarily think there's anything to that. If they put 5% of the blame on Michigan simply not wanting to play, I think there's going to be something to that. And somebody, I forget exactly who said it, one of the players said it on Tuesday about how you've got guys now that have been working almost like 700 days for this game because they didn't have it last year. So I think that's something. And as we know, Ryan Day can hold grudges, and we've seen it expel itself on the football field. And I don't know if there's any greater grudge than simply Ohio State versus Michigan. So, I think there could be something there. I don't think it's what will will them to victory, but I think it's a little something.
It might be a little something, and their motivation is never in short supply this week around the Woody. So, if it's a little extra something, it's a little extra something. I don't think it helped the relationship between the two programs in any way. And yes, as someone who has been counting down to the Michigan game for 538 days now on this very program, it's nice to actually start getting in numbers that we've never hit before. So that's a fun thing as well. You mentioned the Zoom last year with Justin Hilliard. I think we've probably talked about this on one of the shows at some point since then, but just for people who don't remember, the Michigan game cancellation broke on Twitter during the Ohio State press conference. So Justin Hilliard, who is this sixth-year senior, up at the podium talking about how much this game means to them, how this means the world to them, and how important this is to them. And he's been hurt for so many years in his career. He's finally going to get another chance to play against Michigan at home, go out on his senior day, and right as he's talking, the news starts to break on Twitter. And just as the news starts to break on Twitter, the Ohio State Sports Information Director calls on the next reporter to ask a question. And Tony, who was that reporter who got to ask the very next question after that story broke?
That reporter was me, and this was also me before it. Please don't call on me. Please don't call on me, because I didn't want to be the guy. Like, everybody wants to give me the news, give me the good quote. Yeah, sure, but it's like Justin Hilliard has been through a lot, and I couldn't not ask, and I had to do my job. And so, yeah, I asked him, hey, just coming down on through Twitter, and Michigan has canceled the game. Your thoughts on that? And his answer was, well, that's not what we've been told. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's just happening now. It's confirmed now. And at that point, Justin Hilliard was like, well, I until I hear from the coaches. And then immediately right after, within seconds of Justin Hilliard saying that, then sports information director Jerry Emig was like, okay, that's going to do it for interviews today. And that was not supposed to do it for interviews today, but that certainly got it done. And that ended everything. And it's still something that I'll never forget. Justin Hilliard will probably never forget. And I was the right guy in the right place at the right time, Tom.
Lucky you. Every once in a while, everything, the universe lines up and you get to be the guy who is the biggest jerk in the world. And that was, I mean, I got to give you credit. You did not blow that chance. It was, that was a very interesting moment. Like, it was a really open and insightful moment, because it's like, you hear, they'll talk about the emotions inside the building, but you don't generally get to see them usually. Like, sometimes you get glimpses of them when they do the locker room videos, the pregame locker room videos and that kind of stuff. But a lot of times, even the guys who are the really loud, vocal, emotional people in the locker room before the game are much more quiet and reserved when they're with us. We don't always get a real look behind the curtain. That was a very look behind the curtain at just how much that game meant and how devastating it was. Like, I mean, just watching him trying to process those emotions in real time, that was a powerful, powerful moment in a season filled with powerful moments. So that was that is definitely one press conference I will never forget. So let's move on now. I think I've shamed you enough for being a jerk. Next one from at Long Drive Larms. I know you guys have shared frequently that the key to winning the game is to outgain the other on the ground. History proves that. Is that irrelevant this year due to OSU passing game / Stroud? And to give you some context here, it was going back to 2004, I believe. The team that has run for more yards per carry in the Ohio State-Michigan game has won, I think, every single one of the games going back to like 2004. There was one year when they had the same, but other than that, it's been every year the team that runs for more yards per carry wins the game. So, Tony, does that matter this year? Or is that completely irrelevant due to the Ohio State passing game and CJ Stroud?
I don't want to say it's irrelevant. I don't think it is as relevant as it has been in the past, simply because Ohio State can throw the ball so well, and because they do want to throw the ball, and because they use the throw game as part of the run game with the wide stuff and some of the jet sweeps. So I think it's incorporated into the running game. So even if the running game, say they rush for 4.4 yards per carry and Michigan rushes for 4.6 yards per carry, but they're getting 13.4 yards per screen, like, that's not going to get factored into the box score. But that's Ohio State using the passing game as part of the running game. Still, you still expect the Ohio State Buckeyes to be able to run and maybe to even run a little bit more than they have in the past this season, in games this season, because that is still part of how you win this game, and you attack the Michigan defensive line rather than allowing them to attack you. So while I think it is not as relevant, I still won't be shocked at all for the winner of this game to average more yards per carry than the loser. And, we've seen Devin Gardner throw for however many 400, 500 yards in the game. Passing yards only do you so much. You still have to control the line of scrimmage. And that's really where this game, it's the preparation and it's the game plan and all of that, but you still have to get the job done up front. And that also incorporates the running game. So a long answer, Tom, maybe.
I mean, I think you kind of hit on it there for a second.
Just one second.
Well, I mean, the most important thing you hit on there is controlling the line of scrimmage. I think that it's not necessarily that you're going to have to run for it. This is why I use yards per play, yards per rush, and not total yards rushing. Because total yards rushing can be skewed by the fact that if you're way behind, you're not running the ball anymore. So you're going to, that's going to sort of default to the team that wins is going to generally run for more yards. Yards per run is a pretty good proxy for which team is controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And if you're controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, you're probably going to win. that is a very good, that is a very good indication that you're going to win the game. I just went back and looked. It is 2002. Since 2002, Michigan has outrushed Ohio State on a yards per play basis twice, 2003 and 2011. And those are the two times they've won. And those are actually two of the worst Ohio State rushing performances in the series since then. They were 2.2 yards per carry in 2003, which that was the Chris Perry game. And then 2011, 4.4 yards per carry. So yes, and then 2012, they were tied. Every other year, Ohio State has outrushed Michigan on a yards per play basis since 2002. So there you go. All right, next one from at Dale Reinecke. How do the Buckeyes prepare for the atmosphere at the Big House? Do you think CJ and the offense will be able to handle it?
I think they prepare for a game at the Big House by turning off the music during practice and then playing cricket noises. For one, I think that gets them into the mood of the environment that they'll face. But I think it's a real thing, not the cricket noises, but playing on the road. They've done it a couple of times. The Minnesota game, Ryan Day said on Tuesday, was a good help, and so was the Nebraska game, obviously, more so than the Nebraska game. But we have seen CJ Stroud have some issues on the road, some nerves, including even at home with the Penn State game, where there are some slow starts. The accuracy wanes a little bit, and then he builds up. And so I think, do I think he can handle it? Yes. Will he be able to handle it from the start? That's my real question. I think he'll calm down, but what happens in the time before, when he's starting to, when he finally gets calmed down, what happens? How long does that last? And how much ground needs to be made up, or how much confidence has the defense gotten from that? So I do think he'll be able to handle it. I just don't know at what point the handling starts. That's where I am. What about you?
Yeah, I do think there's some concern about a slow start, because I think there's two possibilities there. One is they come out of the gate like gangbusters, and if things start rolling, I don't think it's going to take a ton for Michigan to just get into here we go again mode, because this is a team that has gotten the veterans on this team have gotten just annihilated the last two times they've played Ohio State. It's not like they've had close losses. They've just gotten their heads caved in the last two times they played Ohio State. If the Ohio State offense gets rolling and it's 14-0 Ohio State or 14-3 Ohio State with 5 minutes left in the first quarter, I think there's going to be I think, first of all, that's going to completely suck the energy out of the stadium, because guess what? Michigan fans also remember the 2018 and 2019 games. So it's going to completely suck the energy out of the stadium. And then it's like Michigan has to score a touchdown on this drive, or they are potentially going to get blown out of the stadium. That's a possible way the game starts. The other possible way is CJ Stroud comes out. He's been nervous. It seems like he's airmailed some throws early in some of those bigger games, and then he generally will settle down. But, if you airmail a couple throws and, hey, Michigan gets a good drive together and they score a touchdown, and it's 7-7 after the first quarter, or it's 10-7 Michigan after the first quarter, or even if it's 10-0 Michigan after the first quarter, Ohio State's probably going to settle down. The talent probably wins out in the end, but that's the one that turns into a 4-quarter game. So, and I think that, I think that's a real possibility. So we'll see. CJ Stroud obviously is not the same quarterback he was for the Minnesota game. That was a long time ago at this point, but he, we have not seen him come out and just absolutely rain terror on the road, except for at Rutgers, which is like, that sort of counts, but doesn't entirely count. The other thing about the atmosphere at Michigan is, if you've not been there, it is a big bowl. And, Michigan fans get a bad rap for not, being blue hairs, shaking their keys, and not being particularly loud. The structure of Michigan Stadium does not do them any favors. It's a huge bowl, and there's nothing there. They have built press boxes and suites up on the walls on the sides, so that helps a little bit more than it used to. But, you never hear the Rose Bowl talked about as this really rocking, loud venue. Same thing for Michigan. It's just the structure of the place does not hold in noise the way Beaver Stadium does or Ohio Stadium does. So, and plus there might be 20 or 25,000 Ohio State fans there on Saturday as well, which would also probably keep the Michigan crowd noise down a little bit as well. So that's just, if you've not been there, that's a little more context for you. Next one from @fun_magnets. People seem high on Michigan's defense, but among common opponents, Ohio State has a better points per game defensively. Plus, who is the best passing team that they've played? Nebraska? Thoughts on the Michigan defense being exposed again in the game?
There's a lot there, Tom. I tweeted out the other day that of those 6 common opponents, Ohio State's margin of victory is like 21 points. And that's not 21 points over those 6 teams. It's 21 points more than Michigan's margin of victory. I think Ohio State was like 35 to 15, 13 or 34 to 13, something like that in terms of margin of victory over these teams, and including, of course, Michigan's 1 loss. But yeah, I think Ohio State has given up 14 points to these opponents, and Ohio State like 14, Michigan like 20. So it is interesting how you hear Michigan is the better defense, but when it comes to the common opponents, it's been Ohio State. And even more impressive, Ohio State has had some very big leads in those games, and yet is still only giving up 14 points when they've got backups in the game, and maybe aren't so they're playing some bend and don't break, maybe some prevent, like not really concerned about giving up too many points, and yet they've still done this comparatively to Michigan, where they've been considerably better. So I think that's pretty interesting. The best passing team, I guess it would be Nebraska, right? I mean, it would Maryland as well, probably Maryland, but they certainly handled Maryland. They, Talia Tagovailoa, they held him to not quite half of his average, but like 180 yards passing, and we know he's a guy who goes over 300 pretty regularly. So I think that's significant. What would they have done against Purdue? I think, probably better than Ohio State, but it is weird how, like, with Ohio State's defensive line, people are so concerned and they want to get rid of the ball quickly. You don't hear that so much with Michigan's defensive line, and maybe because we're just not focused on it all the time and dealing with the players and the opponents of Michigan. But I think Nebraska and I mean, Michigan State put some yards up on them, but I'd consider them more of a balanced team. They have not faced anything like they're going to face from Ohio State. And when the closest thing to it is Maryland or Nebraska, how tested have you really been?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because and I think we came into the year with 2 big concerns about the Michigan defense. One was the interior of the defensive line. That's held up pretty well against the teams they've played. The other concern was at cornerback, and it's like, I mean, they've clearly improved there. DJ Turner is doing a good job, and Dax Hill is, will cover the slot guy, and so that's 2. But I still don't feel like we really actually know what they have on the other side of the field with Gray and Jamon Green. Like maybe. It's crazy that they've gotten this far in the season, but I think that's part of Michigan's 10-1 record is they have not faced a team that matches up particularly well with them. College football is all about matchups, which is why you can't just go, well, Michigan State beat Michigan and Ohio State beat Michigan State by 1 trillion, so therefore Ohio State's going to beat Michigan State by 1 trillion plus 4. Like, that's not exactly how it works. Michigan has gotten a lot of favorable matchups where the big out-of-conference game this year was supposed to be Washington. Washington can't throw the ball a lick. They played with, their most challenging game in conference was either Wisconsin, who can't throw the ball a lick, or Penn State, which was not able to throw the ball much because they couldn't keep Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo off of Sean Clifford. So you have not faced a quarterback who is mostly clean with talented wide receivers who can throw the ball down the field. When they do on Saturday, I'm going to be very interested to see what that looks like. Because I can't wait to see the defensive ends against the Ohio State offensive tackles. We're going to have a question about that in a second. But, I think, we have watched every snap of every Michigan game this year for Michigan Monday. And I still don't feel like I know what the deal is in one of those positions I came into the year with a big question about. So that is going to be fascinating to see. From last one from @Brett5958, probably an obvious one you would have already covered, but your take on the offensive tackles versus Hutchinson and Ajabo.
Now, Tom, I know you think it's going to be who runs the ball better. For me, Tom, this game comes down to how well who wins this matchup. Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo, the Michigan defensive ends, against Nicholas Petit-Frere and DeJuan Jones at left tackle and right tackle for Ohio State. Nicholas Petit-Frere on Tuesday said, they've faced really good, talented guys every single week, so this week isn't all that much different. But it's a little bit different, and not just the Michigan aspect of it, but to have these 2 guys, and they did a great job on George Karlaftis. Does anybody know the other guy on the other side of the line? Penn State has one good defensive end. Who's the other? And so there's two guys that you don't get a break. Like when you're facing Purdue, you might get George Karlaftis on this play, and then you might not because he's on the other side. Like here, your break is now it's no longer Aiden Hutchinson, it's David Ojabo, or now it's no longer David Ojabo, now it's finally Aiden Hutchinson. And you get a break by now you have to do something differently because one guy's a speed rusher, the other guy's a power rusher, and they're both really, really talented. But Ohio State's offensive tackles have held up very well this season. And so at this point, I think Ohio State is as well equipped to handle them as anybody Michigan has faced. And we know that I think they're both leading the Big Ten with 10 sacks apiece. So clearly they're nearly getting one sack a game. I feel like if that's all they do in this game, just one sack each, I don't know how much that impacts Ohio State. Now it will set them back and get them off schedule. Will it kill a drive? Maybe. If that kills two drives, good job. Does that mean it's only 34 points for Ohio State? I mean, I think there needs to be some turnovers in there and some forced fumbles. But I don't know if they just hit their average. I think Ohio State's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think my follow-up question there would be how many of those are strip sacks? Because if you force a fumble and you give your offense a short field or run it back for a touchdown, as Ohio State has done a couple times this year on strip sacks, that's a pretty big game changer. If it's just a sack and it's now it's 2nd and 16, Ohio State has solved the 2nd and 16 issue at times this season before, and we'll probably do it again at some point. So that'll be that's for sure the single one biggest storyline that I'm interested to watch. That's been one I've kind of had circled since about early October, when it was apparent that Ohio State had some pretty good tackles and Michigan had some pretty good rush ends, and that seemed like that was going to be a pretty titanic clash, and has really only gotten more titanic because this is these are the best rush ends Ohio State has faced. This is going to be the best tackles Michigan has faced. This is also going to be the best quarterback Michigan has faced. It's also going to be the best wide receivers Michigan has faced. Probably going to be the best running back Michigan has faced. I mean, there is a lot to watch and look forward to on Saturday. It is going to be a fantastic week of anticipation, hype, and then what a game on Saturday for all the marbles in the Big Ten East, a shot at all the marbles in the Big Ten, a shot at the college football playoff, and then yet more marbles for a potential national championship game bid. So that's all on the line Saturday, in addition to, the usual pride, gold pants, etc. that is at stake in that Ohio State-Michigan game. Cannot wait. We will have a whole bunch more all this week. If you are not subscribed to the Buckeye Weekly feed, subscribe to the Buckeye Weekly feed. We are cranking out a bunch of content there as well, because we know you are looking for stuff as you're driving, as you're flying, as you are just trying to wish away the hours before kickoff on Saturday. We will get you there. We can't quite go 24/7 on coverage this week, but we are about as close as we can get. So we'll have all that stuff on the Buckeye Weekly feed, on the Morning Scoop feed this week. We'll also have some live shows on youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop a little later on in the week as well. Kevin Noon and Tony and I did one on Tuesday night on the college football playoff rankings release. We'll do another one on Friday. We'll do another one pregame on Saturday. We'll do another one postgame on Saturday. So go ahead to youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop, subscribe there, and you'll be notified as soon as we do those shows. So hopefully that's enough for you. If not, we're doing our very best. Thank you guys all for joining us, and we'll talk to you a little later on.